Welcome back to the Press Club with me, Kendall Burton and Earl Bousquet. We're going to shift our focus to the election campaign. The Mirror newspaper announces 5 more election candidates presented. UWP endorsed 3 candidates. SLP presents 2. For the UWP, Leonard Spider-Montour, for Grosele, Edmund Estefan, Denry South, Francisco Jean-Pierre Labrie. On the SLP ticket, Jerome Gideon from Denry South, Joachim Henry for Castries South East. We're talking about the marijuana. It should be an election issue. What are some of the issues that we can expect or should want to see debated or discussed?
I don't think the marijuana issue is one that should be an election issue for the simple reason that I don't think enough public education has been done about the other aspects of marijuana than smoking. You know, the industrial aspects, the medicinal aspects, the economic boom that it can present. I don't think those factors have been sufficiently relayed to the average St. Lucian.
Should that even really be a prerequisite? Because to me, the campaign, I think as a voter, I would like to know where the UWP or the SLP stands on it. If the UWP were to win the election, would we expect us to go toward siding with St. Vincent and looking at exporting marijuana, decriminalizing marijuana?
Well, I think that question has been answered to a certain extent from the standpoint that St. Lucia is already a member of the CARICOM grouping that is pursuing the question of legalization or decriminalization of marijuana. So clearly the current government of St. Lucia, which is represented by the ruling St. Lucia Labour Party, is in favor of seeking to move to another logical move insofar as marijuana is concerned. It is not satisfied with the status quo, which is why it has agreed to look and see what needs to be done, whether it is legalized or decriminalized.
Let's move beyond looking and seeing and, you know, outline a plan, you know, which is what I think a lot of people really want to see. In terms of, you know, even the UWP's criticisms of the government policies, we are yet to see an outline of what your plan or your alternative is.
I'm afraid of that because electioneering, I think the marijuana issue will be drowned into a partisan something if it is made an election issue. And also from the standpoint that parties tend to promise. What if both parties promise, go head over heels over each other to promise which will be the first or which will take the shortest time to replace bananas with marijuana? And then the winning party is unable to do it because it encompasses certain legal and constitutional restrictions that would, you know, inhibit St. Lucia as it does now, because no one country in CARICOM as a community can take a position without the others considering, because if on the issue of marijuana all 15 do not agree and 2 do not agree, then it means that marijuana would be legal in those countries that have agreed to legalize it or decriminalize it, but it would be illegal in another country. Now, if CARICOM as a grouping has adopted, because CARICOM goes by consensus and by majority, so if CARICOM adopts it as a grouping and the average CARICOM citizen is told that it has been legalized or decriminalized, does it mean that you cannot go to that particular territory? So you're on a plane flying from Jamaica to St. Lucia, but you have to go through Barbados. It's legal in Jamaica, it's legal in St. Lucia, but not legal in Barbados. So what do you do?
I'll leave your weed at home and buy it when you get there. But in terms of the campaign process, so we've talked about the need for debate, the need for discussion of serious issues. We had an example this week with the Emma Hippolyte reference by Guy Mayers, Nancy Charles and Spider-Montour of Emma as a granny and her response. I want to get your reaction to it. But is it, listening to Guy Mayers last night, it's an expected part of politics. You poke fun, it can't be serious all the time. But at the same time, you have an an electorate facing some serious issues who want serious debate on resolution of those issues, you know, and we don't really have time for the back and forth on the joke.
No, I think it's understandable that Mr. Guy Mayers would try to explain his way out of it. It's understandable that Mr. Spider Montoute would try to explain his way out of it, because it has not gone down well. On the one hand, if we are to believe Mr. Mayers and Mr. Montoute's claim that, you know, this is just an abnormal part of politics, it may have been traditional, but climate change is on, and it's also on in people's minds, and therefore when we listen to the responses from people, young and old, UWP and Labour, you know, St. Lucian and Foreigner, everybody, I haven't heard of one person who has said that the comments in relation to Ms. Hippolyte were proper or were good, or they support them. I have heard comments on the other way saying that her response was appropriate, but I've also heard that it takes two to quarrel, and it takes two to contribute to a foolish discussion by way of responding to it. So I think that one of the important aspects that is being missed by the likes of Mr. Mayers and Mr. Montoute is that this is an age when the very parliament that each of them are striving to return to has evolved over the years to the extent where the presence of women in parliament has been given a certain level of traction and attention and importance that they tend to ignore. And that is that just 2 weeks ago, St. Lucia hosted a meeting of parliamentary women to discuss the issue of discrimination and violence against women parliamentarians. And many here was wondering, well, what's that all about? It is because it has been found that throughout Latin America and the Caribbean, while there are women in parliament, they continue to be a minority, but also that the men in parliament, in the majority, do not pay attention to the gender issues and the level of recognition of the rights of women, including the rights of women to be politicians, the rights of women to be parliamentarians. So, whereas...
And that's precisely what I was saying. Why aren't these issues, you know, more prominently discussed or brought forward on the platform? Because obviously, as somebody else pointed out during the Newsweek, women are voters as well.
No, they are the most, and they are the most influential voters.
And they need to know where the parties and the candidates stand on these gender-based issues.
And that brings us to an issue that we really need to continue to address, and that is the continuing call for public debates, town hall debates, for lack of a better word. It's the Voice has had 2 editorials supporting the calls for the parties to come together and agree to have the sort of debates that we like watching in the U.S. presidential race, where contenders will come together on a platform and be questioned, whether by members of the press and or members of the constituency or members of the public. It can be done, for example, let's take Zika. The whole question of Zika, it's going to be with us for the next year, you know, and continuous. The elections will have come and gone for the next year. There will be a, you know, a government of St. Lucia there, but Zika will have preceded that government. So shouldn't Zika be an issue where the parties, the people who would like to speak on health for the various parties, go to the communities and tell the communities how they intend to address this new and additional disease in a situation where every year we seem to be getting a new one coming our way. You know, we've had to deal historically with dengue, then chikungunya, then the Ebola fear, now the Zika, and then the microcephaly and the other attendant diseases. So what plans do the parties have for that.
Somebody brought to my attention this week, and I cannot remember it happening. Maybe you can shed some light on it too. The opposition has never issued a statement on climate change, where it stands on climate change, what policies it plans to introduce to mitigate against climate change. Issues like that, you know. Yes, people are concerned about, you know, the bread and butter issues, you know, but that also affects the bread and butter in the long term. You know, we talk about public education and understanding of the real impact of climate change is wide-ranging, you know, from health to crime, you know, and across the board. But we're due for a break, another one. Let's take that one, and when we come back, we can talk a little more about that. You're watching The Press Club. We'll be right back after this commercial break.